We have almost forgotten that we are in a great mortal combat, the battle of the forces of good and the forces of evil. Today we are beginning either to domesticate the devil or else to deny him. God's definition of himself is, I am who am. The devil's definition of himself is, I am who am not. He is most powerful when he is denied.
Welcome to Wednesday War College. We got a great show today. Remember, the month of June is dedicated to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Don't forget that. Remember, as Catholics, we want to promote the Sacred Heart of Jesus to all our family and our friends out there that have never encountered this beautiful devotion. Also want to remind you that today's Wednesday of the 7th week of Easter, and today's responsorial psalm, Psalm 68, saying to God, O kingdoms of the earth. Yep. God is our king. He's not our president. He's not a governor. He's not a mayor. He's not a chief. He's not a commander. He's our Got my buddy, Dr. Dan Schneider, here every single Wednesday. Dan, welcome to the show. And this Wednesday, we've got a special guest, and I'm sure Dan is going to eat this up. We've got Jonathan Harmon, my new friend. I met Jonathan a while back ago, and obviously, strong Catholics like himself, myself, we hit it off right away. Jonathan is an Air Force veteran who knows Marcus Luttrell, by the way, the Navy SEAL, who was a sole survivor of a military operation in Afghanistan back in 2005. And Jonathan served as a PJ, a pararescueman, and was commissioned as one of the first combat rescue officers in the Air Force. Today, he's a lay Catholic leader in the Diocese of Phoenix. He's married with 6 homeschooled children, and today he works as a businessman. We want to play a short little clip of Lone Survivor for those of you that say, what's that movie? I've never heard of it. I want you to just catch 2 minutes of Lone Survivor, then we'll bring Jonathan right aboard. Mr. Engineer, can you play the clip?
Operation Red Wing was a plan through an area of northern Afghanistan to clean out terrorists.
Going in with a 4-man team, Axelson, myself, Dietz, Marcus.
The primary objective was just to find this Taliban leader, but they got there and many things start going wrong.
This op is compromised. The way I see it, we got 2 options. 1, we let them go, roll the dice.
The second that they run down there, we got 200 on our backs.
2, we terminate the compromise.
We cannot do that. I don't care. I care about you. I care about you. I care about you.
It was the dilemma that these guys were faced with. There really was no easy answer.
This is not a vote. We're gonna cut them loose and we're going home.
Roger that, sir.
You see this? We're fixing to get into a pretty good gunfight.
The actors knew they had a responsibility to capture that warrior spirit that these men had.
I took a fall. Chest came up over my hips and I started flipping. As the sun came up, I had had enough, and I was just like, I'll just engage till they kill me.
Marcus has dedicated his life since this happened to telling this story to as many people as he can.
That's about right. And then I went this way. When I started doing speaking tours, that was to keep the memory of my teammates alive.
He believes the reason he survived is to make sure people remember who these guys were and how they died. He was going to make sure I understood what happened on that mountain. What is the common denominator to make someone willing to stick it out?
What it all boils down to is the willingness to give your life to make it through something, and the others won't.
And I asked some of the SEALs, do you get scared? And they said, our greatest fear is not being there for each other. That's all they care about.
When we come up on the guns and we start firing, I'm not firing my weapon to protect myself. I'm firing my weapon to protect you. We surround each other, protect each other, look out for each other, and that's when you know you're gonna make it.
Ready? Go, go, go!
Marcus, move!
I will have your back. I will be there for you. I will do everything I can, including give my life for you.
So here we go. Welcome, Jonathan, to the program, my friend. You're here with Dr. Dan Schneider, myself. Jonathan, tell us a little bit about the backdrop of this movie, because Marcus Luttrell, and you also had something to do with this. You knew some of the firsthand events of this movie, The Lone Survivor. Welcome to the show, Jonathan, and introduce yourself to the audience.
Hi, welcome everybody. So my involvement in Red Wing particularly is I actually was the first person to detect the fact that they were being ambushed. I basically rolled in assets to, attempted to roll in assets to provide them top cover. And then, the attempted rescue, which was Turbine 3-3, was the single largest loss of life in SEAL history. It's not included in the film, and most people don't connect the two events. But we lost 23 SEALs on that mountain, as a result of this ambush. So there was a mass casualty event. I flowed in U.S. Air Force assets, pararescuemen, Rangers, Special Forces, and Marines to canvass the mountain, looking not only for the anyone that may have survived the initial ambush, but also the recovery operation for all the bodies to bring the aviators and the SEALs home, so that those families can have closure. So two different aspects of kind of like a single or a couple of events. One is that others may live, which is we're going to never stop trying to rescue our people. The second is return with honor, and that is the dignified transfer of remains and bringing those people home so that their families can receive closure. So I ended up putting together, not only the search plan, but also the support plan, dropping in, bundles of ammunition, water, communications devices, and everything to what turned out to be Marcus. I was the original one to detect that we had somebody on the run, a U.S. service member on the run, as a result of the ambush. So essentially all the signals intelligence, all the ground intelligence, everything that we were able to amass created I fused together all of that into a picture that then I, forwarded to command. They brought me to Afghanistan to kind of run the rescue effort and the repatriation of remains effort. And then I sent in, once we had confirmation or proof of life, which is kind of indicated in the movie. I just a disclaimer open. I've never seen the movie or read his book because, frankly, I preserved all of that in my own memory. So there, if you had a Q&A, I could probably, kind of sort through that, but I wouldn't be the right person to say, hey, this is, this entire movie is not accurate because I hadn't seen it. But there, if you had particular scenes or questions, I could, easily answer that. Anyways,
Jonathan, let me ask you a question. Where were you at this moment?
Yeah.
And Dan, jump in whenever you want to ask Jonathan something. What was your faith component at this moment? Were you on the searching still? Were you now entering into the Catholic Church? Where were you at during this event that you'd call Operation Red Wing in Turbine?
Excellent question. So I had I had been baptized, but Baptist church. I was not baptized in the faith, and I absolutely had I might have been kind of considered to be an anti-Catholic at that period of time. I was not raised in a Christian home, agnostic or atheist. As both sets of grandparents were Freemasons. So what is interesting, maybe more appropriate to this audience, is that what compelled me to start to look into this and what drew my attention to this, sitting at the Combined Air Operations Center as a watch supervisor for the Joint Personnel Recovery Center, and also networked into the, when we think about the Joint Special Operations Force, is the Spirit moved me. And I would say for the first time in my life, I was compelled to act. And as it turns out, going through this process, and they brought Marcus to me after I had sent in the rescue team to go pull him off the mountain and bring him back. I was his reintegration team lead. So I heard the story of Red Wing before anyone else did. Wow. So there were a lot of other people, Marcus entrusted his story and what is on the official record in front of cameras and everything. There's a very small, 3-man team that is designed specifically for this purpose, to record and document the event as it happened, as fresh in the mind of the people as we can. So I ran that effort, and I have the actual story, and with more fidelity than anyone else likely.
Wow.
So Marcus, it may be interesting to this audience particularly, is that Marcus discovered his faith in captivity. And
hold that thought. That's a cliffhanger right there.
Yeah.
We're going to go to a quick break. We want to end right there. We're going to be right back. We're talking to Jonathan Harmon. He's an Air Force veteran who knows Marcus Luttrell, the Navy SEAL who was the sole survivor of a military operation back in Afghanistan in 2005. Jonathan, we're buddies now. I just, met him a couple of weeks ago at a get together with a bunch of Catholic men. And I think God has put us together for a reason. He was a pararescueman. He was commissioned as one of the first combat rescue officers in the Air Force. Today, he's a lay Catholic leader. He's got a wonderful family, 6 homeschooled children. He's a businessman, and we're going to be picking his brain, especially about the faith components. And I'm sure Dr. Dan Schneider who's also deployed overseas with the Army. I'm sure he has a lot of questions to ask as well. So hold that thought. We'll be right back. We're talking to Jonathan Harmon about the movie, about the intricacies of the movie Lone Survivor. This is something that you won't get in the movie, but you'll get here on Wednesday War College. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Jesus said in Luke 17, "When you have done all that you were ordered to do, say, 'We are unprofitable servants. We have only done our duty.'" According to St. John of the Cross, God is pleased with the little deeds we do in secret. He takes more pleasure in these than in a multitude of grand works that we may do out of the desire to be seen by others. May God help us to do the things that please Him, and not just to appear great in the eyes of others.
This is Jesse Romero.
And I'm Terry Barber
From the Terry and Jesse Show. And we invite you to listen to the Holy Hour of Power, High Energy Catholic Radio. We're 2 Catholics with a PhD in common sense. We're on Monday through Friday on Virgin Most Powerful Radio.
What we're going to give you is masculine Catholic teachings on the faith. We say we're too inspired to be tired, we're too protected to be dejected, and we're too renewed to be subdued. Why? Because we believe in Jesus Christ and His bride, the Church. And we will take each issue of the day and show you how the Catholic Church has the answer for our culture. What we really do is bring men back into the Catholic Church, which it's about time to do. We want men to be leaders in their Catholic faith so that they can bring their family to heaven.
Our program is not right versus left, it's right versus wrong. And our program is where Catholicism and culture intersect. It's High Energy Catholic Radio.
We're going to inspire you to fall deeper in love with Jesus Christ and His bride, the Church.
The Terry and Jesse Show on the Virgin Most Powerful app.
This is Terry Barber. I want to thank you for your support here at Virgin Most Powerful Radio. Here's an easy way to do it. If you're going to sell or buy a house, call Real Estate for Life, 877-543-3871, because they're going to get you a Christ-centered agent to purchase your home or to sell your home. And at the close of escrow, a portion of his commission goes right back to Virgin Most Powerful Radio. Call 877-543-3871. Thank you so much for your support.
Welcome to Wednesday's War College. We're here with Dr. Dan Schneider, my new friend Jonathan Harmon, 3 serious Catholic men, and we're talking with Jonathan Harmon about his collaboration on that day that that we as Catholics or people around the country watched that movie, Lone Survivor. It was a military operation back in 2005. Jonathan, can you define for some people in the audience, non-military, Operation Red Wing and Operation Turbine? Okay, because you've thrown those terms out there.
Yeah, actually, great indicator right there. So 20 years ago, coming up this month, was an event that occurred in Afghanistan, up in the mountains of Afghanistan in the northeast. There was a surveillance and reconnaissance mission after a high-value target, codenamed Red Wing. The series of targets was based on hockey teams, and so the idea was that we would sanitize their names so we could communicate, but they wouldn't know exactly who it was that we were targeting. So a 4-man SEAL team volunteered to be inserted into the mountains to conduct surveillance and reconnaissance to report the locations of one of these particular high-value targets. They were compromised on infill by a young shepherd boy, and they elected to let him go. As a result, the young boy informed the local villagers, who informed the Taliban. And when the morning came, where the SEALs had camped out over the evening, when the morning came, they had been encircled and then were subsequently ambushed at dawn. 3 of the 4-man team were killed on the site. The 4th man was shot and blown up, from RPGs, had a lot of shrapnel damage, and had essentially escaped and evaded the initial ambush, which is, he was told to do so by one of his teammates. Survive, tell the story so that no one forgets our sacrifice here. He ended up becoming captured by a local Pashtun tribe and was held in captivity for about 10 days. His life was ransomed. There was quite a price on his head. There were multiple opportunities for the Taliban to have come in and killed him and the entire village. And ultimately, there was a rescue that brought him out of captivity to friendly control, and then he went through a reintegration process. While he was just after the ambush occurred, there was message traffic back to headquarters that they were in the middle of an ambush, and there was a hasty quick reaction force that assembled on a MH-47 and flew in to try to, in an attempt to effect a rescue or a snatch. And on short final, that aircraft was shot down in the HLZ, and everyone on that aircraft was lost. That aircraft's call sign was Turbine 33.
Got it. Okay. So Operation Red Wing and Operation Turbine, all of this is in the movie Lone Survivor, and I guess Marcus Luttrell's story centers on the events of Operation Red Wing, particularly the combat and the survival aspect of the story, and it also talks about his harrowing experience, obviously, and how he endured after surviving the ambush. Correct?
Well, I hadn't seen the movie or read the book. I did an interview with Marcus, so I'm pretty familiar with the story.
But talk to us about his faith component and your faith component, the way both of you, probably as a result of this, both of you started journeying towards Christ.
Yeah. So as I mentioned before the break, Marcus rediscovered his faith in captivity at a point where they had put him into isolation. The local villagers, he was being pursued by the Taliban. They knew that he existed, that he was in this village. They had threatened to kill everyone, not only in the village, but all the way down the river valley, as a disproportionate reaction to their protection of him. Marcus was put into isolation in somewhat of a wadi, and he knew that he was likely to be killed. And so at that moment, in that point of introspection, he turned to faith, tried to recite the prayers of his childhood, the Hail Mary. I guess he was originally, his family was Catholic, but he didn't participate in the sacraments or anything, wasn't properly formed, perhaps. And so going through this process together, we ended up returning Marcus with honor. and he continued to operate into, throughout another deployment, and then signaled out, and, because of his post-traumatic stress, recognizing that he was a liability in the battle space at that point. So he returned home, and so did I. And we both had our trials. That's when the trials really started. Marcus's trials were different than mine, but we started to kind of, turn toward the faith. My journey to Catholicism started right then, because I couldn't reconcile how I knew that, I can't describe it, but it's almost like I had a vision of what was occurring, and I was put on scene. And then I was in a position that I was one of the only people on the planet that could have fused all of that together to affect his recovery or his rescue. And then shortly thereafter, that kind of, premonition or, providence that was bestowed on me, it actually had other effects, which are unrelated to this story, but still related to rescue. And then I came home trying to reconcile it. And the only place that I could find that offered a solution was the Catholic Church, which set me on a path to what would end up being, I attended the Crescio, became confirmed in the Catholic Church. In fact, I went through formation, an RCIA out in Okinawa, but my confirmation, everything actually occurred in Iraq for the surge with Joint Special Operations Command. So as their head of personnel recovery. Years later, I got married. We have a sacramental marriage, and now we have children, and they're all like, I'm a lay Catholic leader, 4th degree knight, and nobody would have predicted this. This is completely providential. As it turns out, I have stayed in contact with Marcus, and his journey has been very similar to the faith. So he was confirmed as a Catholic about 3 years ago.
Wow.
And so he lives a extraordinarily Catholic life. He says his rosary every morning as he wakes and walks his property. Jesse, I think you know where he lives.
Yeah.
And so I, before coming onto this podcast, I reached out to Marcus to ask him if it would be okay, because I view this as a very private matter. A man's faith and his journey to faith is usually his own testimony. And so I'm standing here as a proxy for Marcus on this podcast to witness to his grace and his glory and his providence over Marcus's and my life.
Dr. Schneider, I know you're chomping at the bit to say something.
Yeah, no, I'm enjoying listening to you, Jonathan. I was kind of laughing. A friend of mine asked me, he called me in distress, and he said, "Oh no, my son, he wants to drop out of college and join the military." Can you talk some sense into him? So I sat down with him and I said, "What do you want to do?" He goes, "I want to go in the Air Force." And I said, "Air Force? Are you serious?" And he said, "Yeah, I want to go to the Air Force." I said, "Look, if you're going to go to the Air Force, you got to go into the PJs." And so he was taking notes, and I get a call about a month later. He said, "Yeah, I think I'm going into the PJs," which is pretty much the coolest thing, the coolest job, besides, of course, flying, which is equally cool, in the, your jets and fighters and other things.
If I could pause you right there, it may be noteworthy to tell the audience that our mission area, we are called Guardian Angel. We are the only officially named unit, and our moniker is St. Michael. So when we fly into a combat situation, we are like the wings of an angel, and we come in, and in the middle of the chaos, our mission is to restore order and restore life, and then extract those people. And if we have to, we'll leave team members behind to turn the tide of the battle. And that is kind of, that's why we, medals of honor have been written about, PJs, and our lore is fairly secure amongst the Joint Special Operations community, Delta Force, SEAL Team 6, and others, whether it's the other governmental agencies or conventional forces. So we also work for NASA. So when you think of like, hey, how do we send men into space? And how are they recovered when things go wrong? Those are U.S. Air Force pararescuemen.
Wow.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Wow.
Now, on that day, that was it DevGru that was shot down, right? The aircraft was most of those guys, SEAL Team 6 guys, or was it
Well,
just
it was a mix of, excellent point. So the aircraft was a joint, it was a JSOC, it was a Task Force 160th bird.
I had read or heard that that the task force wasn't available and they were National Guard guys. Was that a different mission I'm thinking of?
So yeah, not necessarily. So the National Guard guys may have been the guys that you're thinking of, like that went up there on the mountain, like walked up, to try to find survivors.
And I'm talking about the air assets for the exfil.
So for the exfil, those were SEALs, not National Guard members.
Okay, no, but the Chinook guys were task force.
So there likely were a mix. I don't have the breakdown of exactly who was on.
I'm just curious. It doesn't matter. I think it's.
I think it is noteworthy when you because who are the pipe hitters that are going to get in there and exact revenge, right, or make a difference. The concept here is that it's important because the line of distinction is the individuals that were compromised and ambushed. They were they were Blue Water SEALs out of Hawaii, and it was their very first deployment. And so the men that went in to go get them were a combat mix, is what my understanding was.
Yeah.
I had moved off target at that point because I was really hyper focused on getting Marcus home.
Did you go in? Did you go? Were you on the ground on his extraction?
No, they brought him to me. So the team that went to go pick him up were Air Force pararescue men from our reserve unit, based here in Tucson. I'm actually in Phoenix, but they were here in Tucson, and at the time I was the commander of the active duty unit. The flight. I don't want to overstate my rank or influence, but my point being is that I had taken our brand new active duty organization, first time ever, first deployment kind of thing, and kind of brought them over, and so ended up pushing in these conventional Air Force rescue assets to go effect this recovery or rescue mission. The recovery mission of Turbine 3-3 and all those people, that was a simultaneous but also separate event. So we have different actors doing different things. Joint Special Operations assets were used in the recovery operation, and for the Task Force Bird and for all the occupants of Turbine 3-3, and for the KIAs and Red Wing.
Hold that thought, guys. Good conversation. I know we got a lot to talk about. We got another 2 segments. I'm here with Jonathan Harmon, Dr. Dan Schneider, 2 veterans that are deployed overseas. And we're going to be talking about PTSD next.
Here's a great way to support Virgin Most Powerful Radio. Do you have an old car you want to get rid of, motorcycle, RV, or boat? Simply call 855-500-7433, and when they sell that vehicle, a portion of that money comes right back to support Virgin Most Powerful Radio. It's an easy way to do it. I want to thank you for it. Call 855-500-7433. God love you and your family.
This message is for you. A great man once said that evil is powerless if the good are unafraid. Well, you and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness. We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind and his long climb from the swamp to the stars. And it's been said if we lose this war, and in so doing lose this great way of freedom of ours, history will report with the greatest astonishment that those that had the most to lose did the least to prevent it from happening. Well, I think it's high time now that we ask ourselves if we still even know the freedoms that were intended for us by our founding fathers. Every generation of Americans needs to know that freedom exists, not to do what you like, but having the right to do what you ought. You weren't made to fit in, my brothers and sisters. You are born to stand out. Set yourself apart from this corrupt generation. Be saints. God bless you.
This is Terry Barber. I want to thank you for your support here at Virgin Most Powerful Radio. Here's an easy way to do it. If you're going to sell or buy a house, call Real Estate for Life, 877-543-3871, because they're going to get you a Christ-centered agent to purchase your home or to sell your home. And at the close of escrow, a portion of his commission goes right back to Virgin Most Powerful Radio. Call 877-543-3871. Thank you so much for your support.
Hey. Yes.
Yeah, Dan, jump in. Go ahead.
Before we get into PTSD, I wanted to ask, I wanted to bring something up. You mentioned returning with honor. I want to kind of bring it back to that. I think that if I recall, Jonathan, that's the model from SEER training, right?
SEER specialists, those fall underneath the purview of a combat rescue officer's leadership.
Right.
And that mission, is something that extends all the way back to the, American establishment of America's armies.
Yeah. I've used that phrase recently in a manuscript I'm working on because it's great imagery, returning with honor, and that's kind of what, tying it back to the spiritual life. I think some of the lessons we get from the military, I think, are good because they returning to honor. We're not made for this world. We're made for another world, and as you know, experiencing combat and these other traumatic events really highlight. You can either go in one direction or the other. Many veterans go in down a darker direction when they're dealing with the stress and the trauma of war. So returning with honor is a good thing, an image for us to keep in mind as Catholic men. We're not made for this world. We're made for heaven, and we need to return with honor. We need to survive, escape, resist, and evade on our way back to our heavenly homeland. Are you familiar with Father Francis Sampson, who was known as the paratrooper padre? He jumped with the 101st in the Second World War onto D-Day.
I'm not familiar with his works, but I'm familiar with his story. My dad was a member of the 101st, so that's mandatory teaching.
Yeah, this guy's life was so rich. They didn't give the Medal of Honor because Eisenhower didn't think it was appropriate for a chaplain to get a Medal of Honor. But his life was his story from the Second World War. He was my chaplain when I went through ROTC at the University of Notre Dame. He was our chaplain and retired, but his story was so incredible that one aspect of it became how they formed the movie Saving Private Ryan. He was captured on multiple occasions by the Nazis. He escaped the SS didn't take prisoners. They would only execute all the prisoners. Twice he talked him out of it. He tells a story at one time they lined him up to execute him, and he said, I just started praying as deeply as I could, and he said, and I caught myself, I was just saying over and over again, bless us, O Lord, and these thy gifts which we are about to receive. And so, but a great story. But I want to bring it back to the faith. And here's what he says. He says, in civilian life, many people misunderstand the military mission. I've spoken at various universities and been challenged by this misunderstanding. I've been asked how I can wear the uniform, which symbolizes war, and also wear the cross upon it, symbolizing peace. One would think that they should find the answer to the very question they propose, for such questions are lawfully academic standards, positions, and responsibilities. It is very easy for me to tell them that by law and statute, the mission of the military of the United States is first to preserve peace, second to provide the security of our country, its borders and its internal security, and third to implement national policy as it pertains to peace treaties with friendly nations which of themselves cannot repel the aggression of avaricious neighbors. I see nothing in this mission that does not appeal to the highest ideals of any man, regardless of his religion. Indeed, it was Cardinal O'Neill, the great churchman, who once said that if he had not been a priest, he most certainly had to have been a soldier, because they both are called to identical things. That is the preservation of peace, the establishment of justice when it has been lost, and the providing of security with the protection for the weak and the innocent. And that really ties in the connection is the same values. And it's interesting that your guys' motto was you're the guardian angels, and you invoke Saint Michael, and that imagery, because I know what you guys do, and I've seen you guys work. I've met many PJs in my time. We always appreciated you guys as a helicopter pilot, because we knew you were the guys that were going to get us out, and so I know some of the guys that went in, and in Kuwait, an aircraft or two that was shot down or crashed in there. So anyway, I wanted to see if you comment on that in your own life experience, some of the crossover values and virtues that you see from your military time in the Catholic faith.
Yeah, great segue. So it is a one for one. When we think about like what is the hero's journey, how God uniquely created man and what he created us for. The expression, like military service is an expression of that. Not everyone is called to military service, thankfully so. We would be in a, kind of a militant state. That's not what we are. We're not communist. We're not compelled to service, compulsory service. And so there are a segment of, members, we think about how many people serve in the U.S. military. During the Revolutionary War, there's a, kind of an infamous ratio here, about 3% of Americans actually fought in the Revolutionary War. And that's been a continuous ratio, kind of throughout, the history of our nation. When you look back, there are just certain families, certain people, certain events that catalyze that type of service. And why is it humans that are doing it versus why are we doing this autonomously and everything? The concept here is that judgment, right? We need to reflect on the virtues. When we think of Catholic virtue coming straight out of the Catechism, there is a combat mix there that is really applicable here when it comes to prudence and justice and things like that. That's why, from a perspective of, it may be if your only perspective of warfare is what you see on television, and that is that people are blowing each other up and shooting guns and things like that, that is a misrepresentation of military service. That may be a act, but it represents microseconds in the spectrum of a 20 or 30-year career, where it's all based on judgment and prudence and service and being efficient, and to provide the peace. So that if you're kind of have a mind for militancy, you may be uniquely suited for a particular aspect of the United States military, but you may not be representative of the whole, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. From our perspective, when it comes to Guardian Angel, we rescue or recover citizens from all over the world. And they're not just combat rescue. This is if you'd ever heard of, these soccer team in Thailand where they were, trapped in a caves network, by a flood. It was U.S. Air Force pararescuemen that got in there and actually set up the entire rescue event, coordinated, the equipment, the highly trained personnel to be able to effect that rescue. So, they were the kind of like the pros that will come in. We're unique. We're positioned all over the world to affect that. If you're called to go and risk your life to save someone else, you may think, and I like to often think of this when I address like Marines, Army, Navy veterans, or people young men or women who are, considering or contemplating service. The Lord, he qualifies the called. He doesn't call the qualified. And so like, that is something that if you think you're eminently qualified already, you're probably not going to fit well. And I'll defer to your opinion, coming through pilot training, if that was the case for you.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's, not every pilot is made the same, and you get qualified there. What's most important are the intangibles. What really always has fascinated me is how the military machine knew exactly where to put individuals. I mean, personality types, and if you've met one, I was a Cobra pilot, an attack pilot. If you've met one, you've met 100 of them. You've kind of met all of us. The same thing with the PJs. A Marine. These different MOSs and different branches of service. They just seem to find the right place. I mean, I couldn't tell you how many guys like me that flew attack helicopters were more hyperactive, ADD as kids, nonconformist, We had degrees in literature and other, and sociology and other things, versus the lift guys, the Chinook guys. Those guys tended to be more engineering, aerospace engineer guys that were more analytical. But when you're flying an attack helicopter, every finger uses something. Every finger controls something. Your feet, even your toes are curling when you're controlling the pedals, when you're doing the cyclic and everything. Your whole body engages. So that's good for somebody that needs a lot, that gets bored easily. So it's amazing how that works. And I think God does the same thing in our own lives. And it's interesting how later in life, guys like us, God seems to repurpose for a greater good. And we fought for a worldly king and for noble causes, but there is no greater cause than the defense of peace, and the defense of souls and the salvation of souls, being guardian angels to bring souls out of the pit of darkness, out of the chains of slavery that are not laying in a wadi soon to be executed, but are laying in a wadi executed, bound by the chains of death, of sin, of the enemy who has got them captive. And our job as men, beginning with our families, but if God calls us to go into the church and into the world, try to help save souls. So I commend you for what you're doing. It's fantastic.
Jonathan, I cut you off a while back ago. You were talking a little bit about Marcus Luttrell, the prayer he said at the Wadi, his conversion. Share a few minutes on that, and then
Yeah. So there is an old axiom: there's no such thing as an atheist in a foxhole. I think that kind of came out of World War II and perhaps the Battle of the Bulge with the 101st. But tracing it back, there are going to be people that'll take me to task on that. But in my estimation and just my anecdotal evidence, I have found that to be true. Many, many people discover their faith in what we could consider to be captivity. They have managed to get themselves into so much trouble, whether it's in the civilian life or in military circumstances. And we often, those of us that are lay Catholic leaders, think that we come to know Christ at the foot of the cross. Because many men are stubborn. I include myself in that cohort. And so that's where I came to found Christ, is to truly appreciate him in his providence in my life, and also his church, right? So, and that was the same thing for Marcus. And it is not a coincidence. The Lord put us together on, in different, from different disciplines for different reasons. I had been training the SEAL teams out at Coronado before stepping. And
I hear the music, Jonathan. Yeah. That's a cliffhanger for sure. We got one more segment. Hold that thought. I'm here with Jonathan Harmon, Dr. Dan Schneider, talking about the Catholic faith and the military service.
Hey, Terry Rodriguez. I'm a monthly donor here in Phoenix, Arizona. Retired Phoenix cop. And I've met Jesse before. And I just want to tell you, you guys were on fire yesterday on the Terry and Jesse show. You guys are on fire. Went to bed thinking, man, what an unwinnable war. But when I got up, I listened to you guys. You guys are doing good work, man. You're doing God's work, and keep doing it. I know it gets exhausting sometimes, but there's people out here that really need the inspiration and the evangelization that you guys are giving us. So my best to you. And I'm Eddie Rodriguez. I'm a monthly donor and proud of it.
This is a catechetical minute from Virgin Most Powerful Radio.
Just as the gestation of our first birth took place in water, so the water of baptism truly signifies that our birth in the divine life is given to us in the Holy Spirit. Catechism of the Catholic Church, number 694. The most basic elements of human life are often the actual tools that God uses in our relationship with Him. Water is one such element God has used, from the flood, to the Red Sea, to the Jordan River. Father, you have made all things with this in mind. May we recognize these signs of your love in creation.
This has been a catechetical minute from Virgin Most Powerful Radio.
This is Terry Barber. I want to thank you for your support here at Virgin Most Powerful Radio. Here's an easy way to do it. If you're going to sell or buy a house, call Real Estate for Life, 877-543-3871, because they're going to get you a Christ-centered agent to purchase your home or to sell your home. And at the close of escrow, a portion of his commission goes right back to Virgin Most Powerful Radio. Call 877-543-3871. Thank you so much for your support.
We're back, Wednesday War College. Jess Romero, Dan Schneider, and our new buddy here, Jonathan Harmon.
And Jonathan, I was corrected. One of my buddies texted me and corrected me. He's listening. It was Extortion 17 that I was thinking of.
Yeah,
that was.
I lost 2 friends on that aircraft.
Yeah, there were a couple PJs. Yeah.
So, Jonathan, let's go back to where we got cut off right before we hit a hard break.
Mm-hmm.
Share the faith component of yourself and Marcus in this journey.
So, Marcus is from a little town in Texas, just outside of Houston, or that's where he resides now. And he married a young Catholic lady who is from Louisiana, and they have raised their children in the faith. As I mentioned before, today he says his rosary on a daily basis and is an active member of the church and participates in all the sacraments. And in fact, I had reached out to him to travel to Assisi to kind of experience, St. Francis's journey, which many people don't, forget that he was a POW, and that he may not be the patron saint of POWs, but one could easily, reconcile him to that kind of mission. This is what was the catalyst for his change, or for him to give up, the world to pursue Christ. And so this is something that I think, regardless of military service, and I'll segue, away from Marcus here for just a moment for the rest of our audience, that no matter where you are, what vocation, you've chosen as a man or as a woman, if you, we all have a hero's journey. And so we, will have to, at some point along our journey, make a perilous decision. And so this is, that point where Marcus and I had our inflection point at the foot of the cross, and we both were given beautiful women as a result of the decision to give our lives over to Christ and to follow him in his church with all of our hearts and all of our minds. And as a result, his blessings on both of us have been a fruitful family, a heart made of flesh. And it isn't easy to continue to, carry maybe our wartime scars. And this is something that, we all share. It doesn't have to be wartime. It can be anything, it's the scars of sin, let's say. And so, to convey to the audience, what lessons they can take from these particular events, it's that they're not alone. These types of heroes' journeys happen all the time. They occur in our lives, your life as well. And that turning to Christ is a guaranteed going to change your life for the better. And if you're sitting on the fence today, and if you're, curious about, well, perhaps I'm kind of a lukewarm Catholic, I challenge you. I challenge you to step into the breach, put on the full armor of God, and own your mission. Whether it's being a husband, being a lay leader, or it's being part of the clergy, step into the breach and come shoulder to shoulder with the rest of us.
Amen. Jonathan, as I hear you talk and Dan talk, both of you guys have this real burden to help guys that have deployed and have come back, and they're wrestling with their own demons. Dan, you want to talk a little bit about some of the projects that you have?
Yeah, so we're trying to put together. Well, Jesse and I are working together to put a school, a basic training type school for spiritual warfare. Most guys that they want to, I want to be a PJ, I want to be a Ranger, I want to be SEAL Team 6. But you got to go to the very basics. Every PJ had to master the basic tasks of being an airman. And same thing, every Ranger, every Green Beret, they had to know the basics. And so we're trying to do that. And I would like to try to put something together to as part of this new school is to help and reach out, provide some resources, spiritual and psychological for veterans coming back, that are struggling with, as you say, their wartime scars, and teaching how they can overcome that, because these men need our help, and also the church could use that experience so it doesn't die with them, that they can find healing through the ordinary means of the church, and take advantage of that and tap in, as you and Marcus have done, is the deeper waters of the Catholic faith. It isn't just all this other stuff you read in the news. It's the deep waters of the life of the sacraments. That is the pastoral nature of the church, the sacramental life, the munus sanctificandi. That is this obligation, this responsibility to heal. That true healing comes through the sacraments. It comes, and those sacraments give us an intimacy with Jesus Christ that you can't find anywhere else, which is why you're here, and not remaining in another religion, because it's the deep waters here. So we'd like to try to help that in some way, and maybe you and I can talk offline how we can join forces.
Yeah, absolutely. Carrying on this mission, I began to carry a rosary into combat with me, and this book by Fulton Sheen, called Wartime Prayer Book.
You mean this one?
This one right here. And the idea is
that was not planned, by the way. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Providential. And so whether or not people are willing, what I find is that people that are at end of life experience, they typically, no matter if they're not secure in their faith, like perhaps they're not Catholic, perhaps they're not even Christian. They have a lot of questions at end of life that flash through their eyes, and to meet those people in that space with compassion and love, and be maybe the only Christ they ever meet in their lifetime. That's what I was compelled to be. And so given, not any ordination or any faculties conveyed, but as a matter of pragmatic, approach to this, like out of compassion, that's where I find myself today, is called, to that type of ministry. And I would say that is very similar to first responders. Whether you're a police officer or a fireman, it is likely that you will not just encounter it once, but encounter it over and over and over again. And I think, to your point, Dr. Dan, that we equip you with the tools. You'll not only be able to reconcile this, but you will become a force for good. You'll be militantized, and you will understand your role in these end-of-life events. And this may also be for just family members who are praying over, a loved one that's about to, going through end-of-life events, or maybe enduring some life-altering event. As I mentioned before, maybe perhaps they're at the foot of the cross. How do I approach them with confidence and witness to God's providence in your life and theirs?
Good stuff. Well, you've been listening to three men that love the Lord, love the Catholic faith, devotees of the Blessed Virgin Mary, talking about the movie Lone Survivor.
Jonathan, let me ask you a question. Give us 3 points how a PJ prays, how a pararescue, how a special ops guy, Catholic man. Because you're not overcoming PTSD without prayer and integration, both sacramental and otherwise, with your wife, your family. How do you pray? What are some of the tips that you would give the listeners?
You got 2 minutes.
Yeah. First of all, it'd be noteworthy to say that pararescuemen are also victims. So we've had far too many take their own lives. We are not Catholic by design. We're Catholic by providence. So there are many PJs who are not lay members of the faith. This is something that I discovered throughout my career, and am thankful that at least we align to this. How do I pray? Well, first we have, we adhere to the motto that others may live and return with honor. We have a little mantra that we say. It's called the Rescueman's Creed. I'll be prepared to do my assigned duties quickly and efficiently, so forth and so on. I'll, put my and it's aligned to the Bible, to the biblical scripture. Where it's, who am I to send? Send me, Lord. And, lay down, who is to lay down their life, who loves their brother. Then I would say that from a Catholic perspective, the St. Michael prayer. And, when we think about like then the third prayer is situational dependent. For me, I tend to default, to our Blessed Mother, because it makes no difference if I'm carrying a weapon and engaging the enemy. If I don't have a compassionate heart at the end of that, my heart will be made of stone again. And I have to continuously remember that she is providing a mantle, over me. And so what we think of is one last piece, and I tend to overlook this in conversation, so I'll make sure to mention it now. The Paraclete. The Paraclete is what provides the protection. And I think that is noteworthy. If we haven't discussed that, let's come back at another time and talk about it.
Absolutely. Dan, comments?
No, that's beautiful. Yeah, I think the commonality is, again, praying from scripture, spending time in prayer. No matter what you are, what you're doing in the military, you have to perfect the craft. And so you have to be physically fit, mentally fit, et cetera. So I think translating this into the spiritual life is that men need to start praying and not just talking about prayer. It's great listening to podcasts, but actually spending time with the Lord in prayer. This is what transforms mind. As St. Paul says, be transformed by the renewal of your mind, so that you may know what is good and pleasing and perfect. And so getting men to engage in prayer, I think, is probably the first step towards understanding their own dignity, but also the healing of the memories that are being fueled or that are used as fodder for the PTSD and TBI and other issues.
Yeah, just as a parting thought, I think for us culturally, we had a compensation mechanism that involved alcohol, and commiseration, and those two were exceptionally destructive when we started to have an ops tempo that drove, the frequency of interaction with combat. It just kind of like cemented into place these traumatic events. That is not the solution, and for our audience, I would discourage anyone from taking that path. If you're on that path right now, do everything you can to get off of it. And I would also suggest that there are other means, and I'm not suggesting medication or drugs as a great alternative. I think that I would recommend that pursue your faith as vigilantly as you would alcohol or some other type of mechanism. Sorry, Jesse.
Hey guys, that's a wrap. What a great conversation, Jonathan. We're gonna have to have you back on again. I'm sure Dan's gonna say, get him back on again, Jess. Thanks a lot for coming on, guys. And let's stay under the patronage of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Let's stay under the leadership of St. Michael the Archangel, and let's stay under the command of the Lord Jesus Christ. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you like this show, copy the link and send it out to your friends, family, and friends, especially those in the military. And remember, we're all called to be great saints. Don't miss the opportunity. Set yourselves apart from this corrupt generation. Be saints. You weren't made to fit in. You were born to stand out. God bless you. See you next time.
Yeah.
Saint Faustina's Prayer for Priests. O my Jesus, I beg thee on behalf of the whole Church, grant it love and the light of thy Spirit, and give power to the words of priests, so that hardened hearts might be brought to repentance and return to thee, O Lord. Lord, give us holy priests. Thou thyself maintain them in holiness. O divine and great High Priest, may the power of thy mercy accompany them everywhere, and protect them from the devil's traps and snares, which are continually being set for the souls of priests. May the power of thy mercy, O Lord, shatter and bring to naught all that might tarnish the sanctity of priests. For thou canst do all things. Amen. Virgin most powerful, pray for us.
Virgin Most Powerful Radio, sharing the gospel with clarity and charity.